The moment the microphone was shoved into his trembling hands, the room filled with a cruel kind of silence, the kind that waits for someone to fail. No one expected beauty to come from a man in a faded janitor's uniform, standing alone on a grand stage meant for stars. Before the story truly begins, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and hidden talent, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Ethan Walker had learned to move quietly through life. For years, he arrived before sunrise at the prestigious Orion Concert Hall, pushing his cleaning cart across marble floors that reflected chandeliers he would never touch. At 41, life had carved patience into his face and weariness into his eyes. He had once dreamed loudly, recklessly, but those dreams were folded away like old letters, kept but never opened. His days were spent wiping away footprints of people who mattered more, listening to echoes of rehearsals drift through the halls while he scrubbed stair rails and emptied trash cans. Music was everywhere in that building, yet it never belonged to him. It hovered just out of reach, like warmth behind glass. The reason music still lived in him was his late mother, who used to hum while cooking dinner in their tiny apartment, telling young Ethan that his voice was something special. She worked 2 jobs, saved what she could, and bought him a second-hand keyboard that sometimes stuck on certain notes. But life did not wait for talent to bloom. After she passed away suddenly, Ethan quit school to work, then worked to survive, and survival slowly replaced every other ambition. Singing became something he did alone, quietly, usually at night, when no one could hear him and remind him of what he never became. Across the hall, Claire Monroe stood as everything Ethan was not. At 34, she was famous, admired, and feared in equal measure. Her voice sold out arenas, her face filled billboards, and her confidence filled every room she entered. That morning, she was rehearsing for a charity gala, surrounded by assistants, musicians, and staff who jumped at her slightest change in expression. Claire had earned her success through discipline and control, but somewhere along the way, control had hardened into arrogance. She noticed everything, especially people she felt were beneath her, and she hated disruptions, even quiet ones. When she heard Ethan humming while mopping near the stage, the sound barely rose above the echoing hall, but it was enough. It cut through her rehearsal like a misplaced note. Annoyance flashed across her face, and something sharper followed. To her, he was a distraction, a nobody who dared let his voice exist in her space. She stopped the rehearsal and turned her attention toward him, calling him forward in a tone that made everyone else freeze. Ethan felt his chest tighten as eyes turned toward him. He apologized silently with his posture, instinctively shrinking, but it was too late. Claire decided, half amused and half irritated, that if he liked singing so much, he should do it properly. She ordered a microphone brought down and placed it in his hands, framing it as a joke, entertainment for the room. Laughter rippled softly among the staff, not cruel enough to protest, not kind enough to stop. Ethan's hands shook. His heart hammered against his ribs so loudly he was sure it could be heard. Every instinct told him to refuse, to hand the microphone back and return to the safety of invisibility, but something inside him, something old and aching, refused to move. He stood there, the stage lights suddenly too bright, the vast empty seats staring back at him like witnesses. His throat felt dry, his mind blank, but when he closed his eyes, he saw his mother again, standing in that small kitchen, smiling as if she had always known this moment would come. He took a breath that felt like the first real breath he'd taken in years, and he began to sing. The first notes were soft, careful, as if testing whether the world would allow them. Then something changed. The sound grew richer, fuller, carrying a depth that no one in the room expected. It wasn't polished in the way Claire's voice was, it was raw, lived in, heavy with emotion that could not be taught. His voice filled the hall, climbing effortlessly, reaching places that felt almost impossible. The laughter died instantly. Conversation stopped. Even Claire's smirk faded as the sound washed over her, unfamiliar and unsettling. Ethan sang as if every missed opportunity, every long night, every quiet dream was finally being allowed to speak. When he reached the high notes, the ones Claire herself often struggled to perfect, he didn't strain. He soared. The notes rang clear and powerful, vibrating through the empty seats and into the hearts of everyone listening. Staff members stared at one another in disbelief. Some felt goosebumps rise along their arms. Others felt a sudden tightness in their throats. This was not supposed to happen. This man was not supposed to sound like this. Claire stood frozen. For the first time in years, she felt something crack inside her certainty. She had built her identity on being exceptional, on standing above others, and now, without effort or intent, Ethan was standing somewhere she had never reached. When he finished, the silence was deeper than before, heavy and reverent. No one laughed. No one spoke. Ethan lowered the microphone slowly, unsure if he had done something terribly wrong. Then applause began, hesitant at first, then stronger, until it filled the hall. It wasn't the roaring applause of a concert crowd, it was quieter, more personal, filled with respect. Ethan's eyes burned as he realized they weren't clapping at a joke. They were clapping for him. Claire joined in last, her expression unreadable, but something in her gaze had shifted from mockery to reflection. What happened next did not turn Ethan into a star overnight. There was no instant fame, no dramatic contract signed on the spot. Instead, something more meaningful happened. Claire approached him privately later that day, stripped of the audience and ego. She acknowledged his talent, not with praise meant to impress others, but with sincerity. She arranged for him to meet a vocal coach, introduced him to people who could help, and most importantly, she apologized. It was quiet, imperfect, but real. Ethan's life didn't change all at once, but it began to move. He started training after work, learning to trust his voice in the presence of others. He sang at small events, then larger ones. The janitor's uniform was eventually replaced, but he never forgot what it felt like to wear it. Claire, in her own way, changed too. She listened more, judged less, and carried the reminder that talent does not ask for permission or status before it appears. If this story is touching something inside you, if it's reminding you of dreams you've put away or people you've overlooked, please take a moment near the end to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe so these stories can keep reaching hearts that need them. And before this story ends, leave a comment telling us what this moment meant to you or who it reminded you of. Years later, when Ethan finally stood on a stage by choice, not by mockery, he looked out at the lights and remembered the day he almost handed the microphone back. He understood then that sometimes life forces you into the spotlight not to shame you, but to show you what you were always capable of becoming.